Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:05 on LBC. I have to say, my brain has to be readjusted now from cross-question to the LBC Business Hour in association with O2. Emma Jones joins us again, founder of Enterprise Nation. We are going to talk about how we can help young people be entrepreneurs and indeed become more employable, because that is going to be one of the key questions that I think as a society, as a nation, we have to get our heads around over the next 6 months to a year.
We do, even though I'd prefer to say it's become more entrepreneurial, because if you become more entrepreneurial, you've got the options of starting a business or working for somebody else.
That is true. And we are going to take your calls on this. If you are somebody who, I'm never quite sure what the definition of young is. Somebody phoned in, was it last night, saying they were 33, and I said, no, mate, you're not young anymore.
I'd say, in fact, it's funny, I was going to tweet earlier, because I know this is all about young people starting a business. And what I was going to say is, but presented by someone who's young at heart.
Thank you. It is true. But let's say sort of under 30s, shall we? Because if you've got an idea to start a business that you think could actually work, that it could be profitable, that you could employ other people, I think there are lots of people out there who've got these ideas. They've got the wherewithal to do it, but they haven't got the money, and they don't know where to get the money. They don't know who to talk to, and that's kind of what I think we need to explore in this hour. And if you'd like to get Emma's advice, or you'd like to give your perspective, maybe you've done it. Maybe you're 22. You've set up a business. I remember a year or two ago, Emma, we interviewed somebody who was 18, I think.
Oh, Ben Towers.
Yeah,
do you remember Ben Towers?
20, yeah.
He was a guest.
And he made $1 million.
Well, and I think he was one of those, I guess, entrepreneurial prodigies where didn't he start selling lemonade in the tuck shop at the age of 11? So I think that's a Richard Branson story as well, isn't it? Started super young. But yeah, I think it was Ben Towers who we had on. But there's so many at the moment. Ben Francis from Gymshark. I don't know if this is a name that means anything to you, but he's maybe 26 now. I'm not quite sure if that's correct, but his company is worth over $1 billion. Wow. And it's just incredible. I mean, superb story, spotted a gap in the market for gym clothing. He is his own customer, started this business.
How can there be a gap in the market for gym clothing?
You have a look at Gymshark, though. I guess there must have been a gap. So I see these quite big guys walking towards me down the street now wearing this Gymshark clothing, and I just think Ben Francis knew exactly what his market was.
Do you get a little frisson when you see them?
I do not, nor would I admit to that. But this is the sad thing about me. The frisson I get is from thinking about the founder who started that business, who has now got global success. So young people, and they are starting businesses in their droves at the moment, because bless them, lots of them have had not much to do over the past 6 months. They've been hit hard by the pandemic, and therefore self-employment is becoming this viable option.
I'm going to throw out a challenge to our listeners, and whenever I do this, they always respond, so don't let me down tonight. If you are under 30 and you have started a business, whether it's gone well or not, give me a call, tell me what the challenges were that you faced initially, and what advice you would give to the 20-year-old you now, if that isn't too complicated. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. We're also joined in the studio by Ronel Lehmann, who's founder of Finito, the employability experts. Tell us what you do, Ronel.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. We help young people over the age of 18, whether they leave school, college or university, to find a meaningful career. And of course, at the moment, there is a lot of worry, huge amount of worry. And we're there to help them navigate and find what it is that they really want to do. Now, some of them are having to change what their ambitions were, but they just need to be given that encouragement and support, because they're all good people. They just have to find.
So how do they find you? I mean, how do they realise they need some help, but how do they latch on to you?
Well, they're usually referred to us by their parents, professional advisors. I mean, normally families will ring their accountant or their banker or their insurer, or their solicitor, and say, well, what can I do? Many parents are asking their friends to actually give them internships, work experience, shadow placements, so they can discover what it is that they want. So we had a young man who came to us and said that he wanted to be a trader. And the business mentor who was sitting with him said, "A trader, are you sure?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Have you watched the film The Big Short?" To which he replied, "Yes." And that was the reason he wanted to be a trader. But of course, we organised for him to go and sit in a trading floor, and he realised it wasn't for him at all.
This is what movies can do for you. I watched Jerry Maguire and wanted to start to be a sports agent. You've seen Jerry Maguire, haven't you? Oh, show me the money.
I kind of want to say that I have, but I'm not sure.
Tom Cruise. He takes the goldfish when he leaves the office.
No, I didn't.
Please, everyone watch Jerry Maguire. Brilliant business story. All around, show me the money, follow your passion. But Ronel, back to young people. One of the things we see with young people starting businesses is they've got brilliant skills when it comes to technology. They're amazing on TikTok, brilliant on Instagram. But as you say, the one thing that maybe they lack is they don't have years of experience in business. So where do you find the mentors that help the young people? So how do you get people who are kind of wise and had lots of experience in business to give back to the younger folk?
We don't recruit anyone who's an academic or anyone who works in careers advice. So that leaves a large number of people who all have different skills and busy lives. They are the ones who can actually provide real life examples and knowledge about what a sector's really like and can open doors. But the candidate has to get the job. We can prepare them, we can help raise their resilience, give them self-confidence, raise their self-esteem. But they have to get the job themselves, and they do.
And have you seen, over the past, 6 to 9 months, have you seen more young people come to Finito saying, actually, rather than looking for a job, I do want to start my own thing, I want to become my own boss? Because, again, I think young people quite often, they're surrounded in this environment that they can't control, and that's everything from climate change definitely to what's happening now, and maybe they feel the only sense of control they can have is if you start your own business, you're much more in control of your destiny, your finances. Have you seen more young people come to you with that appetite?
It's one of the options that we always raise, and I think at the moment young people just need to be told that there is no better time than right now to start a business. Even if it fails, it doesn't matter. We're in this extraordinary period in all our lives. Businesses have changed. If you wanted to go into arts, culture, ballet, opera, theatre, cinema, I mean, look what happened with cinema yesterday. There are no opportunities. If you wanted to be in event management, many of them do, or if you want to be in public relations, lots of businesses have changed their model. Property, chartered surveyors, you only have to walk through central London to see how many offices are closed or empty. So the opportunity now to start a business is really, we need to encourage them, and they will succeed.
One thing we'd love to see is, I had a lovely call the other day with the lady who runs something called Young Enterprise. I don't know if you did this. So at schools, you can set up. Did you?
London School. Yes, when I was 16.
Yeah, so you can set up companies. You have a finance director, an HR director, etc. Anyway, they've done some research to show that kids who start companies at school, they've followed them over the past 20 years and say they are now likely to be in better jobs because they had that experience. And I said to the lady, how young do you go? They go to the age of 5.
I think that's great, because looking back to my school days, which was my secondary school, 1973 to 1980, absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. I studied economics at A-level, but there was nothing about entrepreneurialism, setting up a business. It was all sort of monetarism versus in fact, they didn't even do a lot about monetarism. It's all about Keynesian economic theory and all the rest of it. And none of the teachers would have been equipped to teach it anyway. And yet that is something that has really changed over the last 30 years.
Even though we'd love to see more of it. So Young Enterprise, it is the company programme. However, Enterprise is still not in the curriculum. It's not studied at school. The teachers aren't necessarily set up. And there is something called the Careers and Enterprise Company. But it's one thing we hear a lot is young people say, if I had been taught enterprise at school, maybe I would have the skills to do it a little bit better.
Well, look, you've got two big brains here, two big enterprise brains, people who've been there, done that. They're happy to share their experience with you this evening. If you've got questions on how to start a company, if you're under the age of 30, or it doesn't actually matter if you're over the age of 30, you can still ring in as well. But I'm particularly keen to hear how younger people have fared when they've tried to do this. If you're 18 years old and you go into your local bank and say, I want to start a business and open an account, what reaction do you get from the bank? Do they actually think, well, 18 years old, don't be so ridiculous, go away and come back in 20 years' time? I suspect that is the attitude. And if you don't have parents who have a little bit of money or a little bit of know-how in this area, what do you do? Because you're on your own, aren't you? Who can you turn to? Well, we have somebody here this evening that you can turn to. His name is Ronel Lehmann. He's founder of Finito, the employability experts. And, of course, Emma's with me for the whole hour as well. 0345 6060 973. It's 9:15.
This is LBC.
17 minutes past 9 on LBC. It's the LBC Business Hour with O2 Business, I should say. And we are talking about young people and entrepreneurialism. Emma Jones is here. Ronel Layman is here to take your calls. Let's go to our first caller. It's Archie in Watford. Hello, Archie.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
All right, thank you. What would you like to tell us?
Well, I mean, my brother-in-law actually just rang me and told me to kind of give you guys a call. Essentially, I mean, my kind of story about what's happened over the last year. So about 13 months ago, I kind of left my job in the city and went to start up my own company. Kind of as the pandemic came in March, I kind of got to the point where I was like, actually, I might need to go and get a job here. You know, it was quite concerning, you know. I was on my own, didn't have a lot of capital to kind of work with, you know, not a lot of funding behind me, but they kind of stuck with it. And out the back of it, I've ended up kind of doing okay. You know, we're looking to...
What kind of company?
So we help clients with international payments, so like corporate clients and private individuals kind of move money around. So they're buying goods from overseas or, you know, purchasing a property overseas, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's an interesting... How did you come across that as an idea?
I was going to say, and did you have to get regulated?
Well, no. So we're not... So I worked for a company previously, so who are regulated under the FCA, but we work under a kind of a partnership agreement with a few providers at the moment, which essentially lets us kind of operate under their e-money license. It gets a bit technical, but so we essentially, to get regulated and stuff like that, you do need kind of big backing and kind of big amounts of funds in the business, but the initial capital I needed to start was quite low, so I kind of took the risk, and yeah, coming out the back of it now, I'm kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, essentially.
And so apart from COVID, what was the biggest challenge that you had?
I think, you know, when you first start and you're on your own, you know, it's very daunting, and, you know, you ask yourself a lot of questions like, is this right? Am I doing this correctly? I think, you know, my dad grew up from not a lot, and, you know, I didn't get any A-levels or anything like that, and all those kind of things kind of drive you on to kind of want to do more, and that was kind of my biggest challenge. But I think that I had quite a lot of training, as I say, with like growing up through different avenues with my parents and stuff like that kind of drove me on. So I think, yeah, I think personally that side of it of being lonely, I think, and taking the first initial jump is the scariest part.
And Archie, for people who are listening, and you sound quite young, I don't know what age you are, but you sound youngish from your tone. What would you say, that I'm guessing you don't regret the move, so do you think it was a good move, and what advice would you give to anyone who's thinking about leaving their job and following in your footsteps?
It was the best thing I've ever done, hands down. Being your own boss is the best thing. Obviously, there is challenges along the way, but, you know, just trust your gut is the best thing that I've come across. You know, just trusting your gut instinct is the best way, I'd say, definitely.
So,
Ronel, what would you say? I mean, you've heard what Archie's said there. I mean, he says trust your gut, and I can understand why he said that, but sometimes your gut instincts are wrong.
Yes, and you can make a mistake. You can make a lot of mistakes, and no one who starts a business doesn't make mistakes. I've made them, and you just learn from them, and you just don't, and you make sure you don't repeat them.
What's the biggest mistake you've made?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Well, I asked the politicians in the last hour, so
I think you get probably a more honest response from business people.
It's only fair.
Yeah. Well, I worked in recruitment, which I really enjoyed, then jumped to stockbroking, pre-Big Bang, post-Big Bang, then financial PR, and then ran a marketing agency for 26 years. To be honest, my biggest mistake, I think, was not doing what I'm doing now, because during the last 30 years, more clients asked me to help their sons and daughters, and we did. And half of them never said thank you, by the way, but the other half are all in senior positions today. And I think Finito's come of age because I don't know a role or a job where you can actually put something back into society and you see young people flourish. And what Archie's done is exactly that. And my question to Archie would probably be, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time?
Well, hopefully, providing jobs to other people and inspiring other people to do, stuff that I've done. I want people to come in my business and go and start their own business and, just be in that position that, people look up to and, just giving something back, essentially, I guess, and having freedom, freedom to do what I want to do.
And, have you got an office or are you basically operating out of your bedroom?
No, I was for a while. I will be totally honest. I hope too many of my clients are listening, but I was operating... Don't
worry about it. I presented 90 shows from my bedroom, so there's nothing to be ashamed of, Archie.
It was pre-COVID, though, so like that kind of working from home kind of thing wasn't so acceptable, I think. That was what we do. But now, so I've got a small office. I've got a couple of employees. They're looking to take on apprenticeships and stuff like that later this year, and hopefully grow from there. So,
and apart from trust your gut instinct, what other bit of advice would you give to people maybe who are listening, who are thinking of starting their own business?
Be prepared as well. Trusting your gut is good, like I said, but I think to be prepared and also know what you're talking about. It's all good. I left and I had experience, but I was quite lucky in that sense. But, there's a lot of people that, I feel like there's a lot of mis-selling going on with, buy into this scheme, buy into that scheme. I think, do a bit of research, understand what you're doing, have a bit of a game plan and kind of go from there, essentially.
OK, Archie, thank you very much. Let's move on to Robert in Waltham Abbey. Hi, Robert.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
Hi, what would you like to say?
My business is based around online live streaming, specifically music. And obviously, between last year and 2019, kind of the boom of that kind of industry to go to sort of the peaks and troughs of like right now. For me, if you're a young person starting a business, I think you've got to believe in yourself, but you really got to assess the market. I think that's one thing that I think is really, really important because at least in my industry, it was great last year. And then obviously at the start of March to around sort of June time, it completely dries up. I mean, if there's no music happening, then there's no events happening, then there's nothing to record. So that means all of my business disappears overnight. So I had to sort of adapt and sort of educate a lot of businesses and a lot of artists. A lot of unsigned artists don't really understand the sort of business side of actually marketing themselves. So I actually collaborated with a rehearsal studio and a promoter to do sort of a fundraiser for the music industry. Sort of 3 times a week with that live stream. We would basically get the bands to come in and then they would put their merchandise up almost as like a virtual merchandise stall. And then they would raise money. And then over 2 months, it's actually generated more than £30,000 for the bands. That's like leagues above what would actually be generated at their own gigs.
So you've essentially made an opportunity out of the crisis.
Essentially, yes. I mean, live streaming previously last year was, and even the years before, is the same as like say 360 video or like virtual reality, where it was it was a new thing, and now it's become more of like people have actually learnt the software that I used to be unique in. So now I have to upskill and add value to businesses or like individuals, where before it was sort of like a cool new thing that people were just sort of taking a punt on. Now it's become a part of reality.
But this is what, and I know this doesn't go down well with everyone, stories like Robert's are the stories that I think are the best ones, which is where people recognise pretty quickly the way in which the market was going. So live music wasn't going to happen, and they quickly said, how can I apply my skills in other ways? And Robert, how have you, first of all, are you still going in your business? And I suppose the one other thing, listening to you, listening to Archie before you, I guess I'm quite biased on this point, but I'm a massive believer in getting support. So when you do figure out what's happening in my market. I need to work out how to market myself. My view would be find a marketing expert, speak to somebody who's done it really well. So where have you gone to look for the support as you have pivoted kind of your own business? And is that business still going? I know you mentioned about raising money for the bands, but are you commercially still operating?
Yes, on sort of, I would say sort of low to medium. Like I don't necessarily pay myself a huge salary. It mainly just goes to the business to reinvest into equipment. That's kind of how I'm sort of pushing it. And at the moment, it's just about keeping afloat. But I'll be honest, without support from the government or those industries are actually really on their knees at the moment. I mean, I regularly have conversations, whether it's musicians, promoters, PR, they're all adapting. But I mean, if there's a message for the government, it's just to say really, 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 we need these packages of help. I understand when it's a luxury, and music is a luxury, and but you've got to understand that this is a part of our culture and a very big export. I'd probably say in the top 5 of our exports, outside of maybe finance, those kind of things.
We are. I mean, Boris Johnson likes to say that we're world-beating, world-leading. Well, in your sector, we absolutely are. I don't think anyone would counteract that. I don't know if either of you've heard of a singer called Alastair Griffin. No. His friend, I got to know him because he did the Just Drive theme for Formula One. And when all this started, he decided he was going to do live concerts from his front room.
Brilliant.
On Facebook.
Brilliant.
And of course, I mean, he wasn't charging people to watch them, but of course, if people liked them, they then bought his CDs and downloaded his music and all the rest of it. He then did a 10-day tour of social distance in people's gardens, again, and got a lot of publicity. So it's actually trying to say, okay, well, we're in a bad position. We have a crisis. How can I make something of this? It might not provide me with the income that I'm used to, but at least it will provide something. Now, not everybody's going to be able to do that, though, are they? That's the problem.
But it's so much of this is around attitude. And again, similarly, I knew a musician who for the first couple of months, he was just mortified. Again, as many people are about what's happening in the world of live music. And then he said, right, I'm going to start up a business. So he did garden gigs, he called it, where, again, he would go to people's gardens. This was when the weather was great, and he was getting paid for doing it. But as you say, his attitude was almost, I'm not prepared to take this lying down. Yeah. I'm just going to see. And it's a big thing. We are giving this advice to businesses every single day at the moment. If your customers have disappeared or they're buying in a different way, you have to react and change what you're doing to respond to how customers are buying. So if customers are buying online, you need to be online. If customers are hanging out in their gardens and they're not going to concert venues, you've got to be in their gardens. So it is just around, just as Robert said, you've got to adapt real quick. Young people are very good at doing that. And every business knows you have to offer what the customer wants. And if the customer's changing, you've got to change quickly to respond.
Now, I have asked for people to call in with your stories about how you started up a business if you're under the age of 30. What are the challenges? But I do want you to ring in with questions to Emma and to Ronel as well. 0345 6060 973. If you're at that stage where you think, well, I do want to start a business, but I'm not quite sure which step to take. And here, Craig has just tweeted me. He says, at the moment, high street banks are not opening business accounts for new businesses. If people are losing their jobs and decide to start a business, how can they with no bank account? This is a major issue. Emma is nodding her head at that. We'll talk a little bit about that, about, well, what do you do if you can't even get a bank account? And we've got a great question from Steve in Portsmouth on a text as well, which we'll come to in just a moment. You're listening to the LBC Business Hour with O2 Business. It's coming up to 9:30. 9:33 on LBC. We're going to talk to somebody who's started a new business in a moment. But first, let me read out this text from Steve in Portsmouth. Do you have any advice for a young person wanting to buy a part of a business, which I think could expand, as we both have knowledge of different areas? I wouldn't even know where to begin with trying to make a reasonable offer and conducting due diligence. That's a good question, isn't it?
Oh, it's a great question, but I'd really love Steve to call in with that, because I'd love to know, when he says buying part of a business, from whom, what type of business. But yes, if he's not calling in, I guess my advice would be find advice. So definitely speak to a lawyer. Sorry to plug this, but if you do go on to enterprisenation.com, you can get free calls with lawyers. Please make the most of that, to call someone up.
Isn't an accountant more important than a lawyer in this case?
Well, but a lawyer, though, because you want to know what you're buying into. So if there's an existing business business, what lawyers can do, and this would literally take 30 minutes, is they can talk through, there's a couple of ways you can buy companies, buy shares, so buy the shares, or via value and acquisition. But what you want to make sure, and Steve mentioned due diligence, is you want to see if there's liabilities in that business, if you have to buy the contracts from the person who you're buying into. So speak to an accountant. So putting a value on a company, again, very basically, if you want some guidance on that, a value of a company is usually valued by something called EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, tax and depreciation. So you want to know the EBITDA figure of that company, and depending on the industry you're in, the value of the company is 5 to 10 times EBITDA, which is how you value a company. So an accountant can definitely help you with that. I would say, though, speak to a lawyer, and as I say, get these free consultation calls in so you can just share with people, this is what the business is, and of course be really careful to have an agreement, because even if it's a friend, it's even more so if it's a friend that you're buying in with, it's just like having a prenup in marriage. Not that I've ever done that, but I guess it's kind of when you're liking each other, that's the time when you need to do an agreement.
Should have married better, shouldn't you? Ronel, any advice for Steve?
Yes, I think the thing is that if you're going to need some money, you need to find some like-minded shareholders who'll support you. There will be bank finance available. I know
if you can get a bank account.
If you can get it, a bank account. But also, I think very wise. Talk to your professional advisors, and I would add insurance as well. You should make sure that you're fully covered for any eventuality.
Right, let's go to Daniel Featherstone. He is the founder and chief executive of Made for Drink, and he's a young entrepreneur. Made for Drink, that conjures up all sorts of images. Daniel, tell us a bit about the company and how you started it.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. First of all, I must add that I'm actually more young at heart than 30. So I actually started my business when I was 36, actually. So a little bit after 30. But my business is Made for Drinking. We're a small family business based in Berkshire. We make premium bar snacks. So we supply places like the Crown and Bray, which is part of the Fat Duck Group, Fortnum & Masons, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, etc.
And we actually have, you very kindly dropped off a few of your samples to us this afternoon, I think, didn't you?
Yes.
Emma is fondling one in her hand.
I would not have used that word. Fondling a chorizo thin. Let's rephrase that. I am admiring your packaging.
Thank you.
Does that sound slightly better?
No, it really doesn't.
So, Daniel, to bring this onto a more business and professional footing, so I do have a question for you, because I read a little bit about your story, and I think you made quite a kind of a robust approach to the Fat Duck in Bray. I think, is it called the Fat Duck in Bray? Have I made that up?
There's the Fat Duck Group, which has got the Fat Duck restaurant. It's also got a couple of pubs, so the Hind's Head, the Crown, and then also it's got a restaurant in London called Dinner by Heston.
But it's incredibly well-known restaurant, incredibly well-known chef, and I think you just kind of walked in and said, will you stock my products?
Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, if that was your first lucky break, again, kind of advice to anyone else who kind of thinks, where did you get the confidence from to just go in and pitch someone that you'd never met before?
Yeah, so I incorporated the business in May 2016, pretty much directly after that meeting with the Fat Duck Group. But it's probably about 12 months before, I just saw a clear gap in the market, basically, where you go into a pub, there's amazing craft beers, beautiful wines, spirits, gins being made around the corner. There's a Michelin-starred chef in the kitchen, but in terms of packaged snacks behind the bar, if you want something quite quick, it was at best kind of posh crisp. So that was that's where I saw the gap, and I started making things at home. And I was literally, I saw this great thing on a program by Rick Stein, where he was making these things called Frisson canard, so crispy duck skin.
He's my sound-alike, apparently. Everyone says I sound like him. I can't hear it myself, but that's what I'm told every day of the week.
Do you cook as well as him?
No, I don't. I don't like fish either, but I do have a Jack Russell.
You must be brothers.
Daniel, what I was going to ask you was, I mean, you're obviously like the opposite of Fever Tree, which has seen tremendous growth. What happened during lockdown? How has the business performed? It's definitely been the hardest, but actually, I suppose the best experience I've had as an entrepreneur. So if I take it right back to the beginning of all of this back in March, there was an evening where Boris Johnson basically said that people shouldn't go to the pubs. And I remember just sitting there probably about 1 o'clock in the morning just going, sugar, that's like 70% of our trade. He's just told not to go. So that first 48 hours was really difficult, actually, because me and my wife both run the business. You know, you actually look at each other kind of going, okay, is that the business? And if so, is that the house, etc. And also we've got 9 employees, and there's a big responsibility that you've got as a business owner in paying people's wages. But actually we got everybody together. Within 48 hours, we kind of understood our exact cash position. So we actually, we've been raising money and putting money aside and things like that. So we figured out if it was the worst came to worst and you had to shut the doors, we could run the business for 8 months. And actually that took a lot of pressure off. And actually the biggest thing that took pressure off me was actually realizing that this loss in sales wasn't actually my fault. And I know it sounds a strange thing to say, but as a business founder, you do put that pressure onto yourself a lot of the time. And from there, it gave us like clarity and vision. And we just basically looked at each other as a team, and everybody was, all 9 of us were in the same place, which was, let's look after the team, let's look after our cash, because as soon as this thing opens back up, we want to bounce back into the market or explode back into the market. And that's what this month's been really like for us. Everybody's come back from furlough, bit by bit over the last couple of months, but everybody's back full time now. And actually October sales have been really strong. So I think my wife said to me earlier on that actually we've sold more in these first 7 days of October than we did the whole of last year. So
that can't be bad. Listen, Daniel, thank you so much, and thanks for providing us with No, I won't say it. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. That's Daniel Featherstone there. Now, let's go to a caller. It's Christopher, who's in Kings Hill, where there is a fine golf course, which I frequent quite often. Christopher, very good evening.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to tell us?
Well, I started a company with my mother literally last month, and what we do is, we've taken Persian rugs and carpets from Kashmir, and we are trying to distribute them and sell them in the UK. It was kind of first it was a family thing. My mum kind of came to me, was like, hey, look, we've got a friend, or she had a friend called Inyat in Kashmir who's struggling because of the pandemic, really, really struggling over there. And he called us up saying, hey, look, we've got these wonderful rugs and carpets. Could you sell them in the UK? And then my mother and I, we spoke and we talked about it, and we ended up making a company called Royce & Carter in the UK, which has been quite, it's early days, but we're hoping to open up a store in Bluewater.
Wow.
Yes, it's
that can't be cheap to do.
No, it's not, but we partnered up with quite a nice friend of Inyat's. I'll be honest, we've been very lucky and fortunate. I can't say that for a lot of other people out there. I don't know. I'm only 18, so I'm really new to all this. I'm still in full-time education. But it's been an interesting road, I guess. It's still going pretty well. But, I feel like the COVID thing is pretty tough on all of us, because we're meant to have Inyat and the other shareholder of our company, Ajaz, come over to the UK so we can talk, get things sorted and really established in the UK, because we've already got a website, we've already got all the basics, the fundamentals are already in place.
Well, I'm just looking at your website now, which is very, very impressive, roycecarter.com. And they're not cheap, these carpets, are they?
I was going to say, the one thing I love about your name is it sounds really high-end.
Yeah, sounds like a jeweller.
Thank you. I mean, I've kind of had quite a lot of help building it, but I've done it majority of myself. At my school, Rochester Independent College, has really helped me kind of set everything up, which is really great on them. But they're not cheap. But if you can imagine those carpets before, post, COVID, they were a lot more expensive than they are now. But because no one's really buying those carpets, I think it's really sad, because it's a dying market at the moment, Persian rugs, and we really want to kind of get it up and rolling in the UK again, make some people more interested in these. They're beautiful, but for me, being 18, I've always wanted to start a business. That's kind of the road I've always wanted to go down. Not particularly in carpets, but it was, my mum mentioned that I was going to help out families in Kashmir. So we now, due to all of this, we sponsor a couple families in Kashmir. And that's helped them incredibly, because they're not getting any income, because they're making these carpets. All our carpets are hand knotted. So it takes these one family 2 years to make a 6x4, which is in feet, which, regardless of if it's silk on silk or silk on cotton, it takes them forever. And these poor families are getting no income because no one's buying the carpets. So for us to try and make a market in the UK, I mean, I can't see a lot of people doing it in the UK with selling carpets and stuff. Obviously,
see, I have to say, I wouldn't know where to start the procedures for importing something like that. I mean, what do you have to do if you want to get carpets over here? How do you do it?
So, because of our partnership with Ajaz, he would literally ship all of his produce. He's got tons of stock, which he's going to ship over to the UK, which we will then sell, or the buyers from the UK, someone goes on our website, purchases a carpet, we then ship it in and it's immediately delivered to them. So, like I said, we kind of got the fundamentals there, but it's very hard to get consumer base until we get, I think, a store up and running.
So, Christopher, thoughts from me. I love what you're doing. As soon as you said that name, I immediately had a vision of who your customer was. Then when Ian said they're pretty quite high priced, and I thought it sounds exactly in line with your brand. So just a couple of thoughts for you. What I love about what you're doing is the story that comes with it, that, as you say, you're supporting families, and this is the kind of thing that customers will buy into. So a brand that did that really well is, have a look at a brand called Karma Cola. And Karma is spelled Karma. So Karma Cola, again, have got a real purpose behind their Coca-Cola, that they support the families and the families who grow the coffee beans that go into the Coke. So have a look at them. But also for your shop, I know you mentioned that you're getting a shop in Blue Water, but if you're looking to do a shop on a small business budget, there is a brilliant concept called Sook, SOOK, which is where they open the shops, and you as a small business can rent the shop by the hour. And they've got one on South Moulton Street at the moment, which for you I think is probably your target market, so quite high.
Judging by the prices.
And this is the thing, you want to go, it's
£8,000 for a carpet.
But this is beautifully woven. So maybe check out those kind of couple of things. You've got a great story, tell it well, and have a look at Sook in terms of...
And Simon, on your website, I can't get the pictures to work. It may be my computer, but you might want to have a look at that, because I can't actually see the products. Yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, as I say, it may be my computer, but they're not coming up. Listen, Ronel just wants to have a quick word, and then we'll go to
I
break.
just wanted to say something about your mother. How wonderful it is for you to have her support, and that's exactly what young people need. I mean, I started my first business, and my mother answered all the calls. So everyone should have a mother helping. Why not? And my mother will be very pleased that I mentioned that.
Christopher, thank you very much for...
Honestly, my mother's given me the backbone of everything. She's always supported me throughout. I mean, I haven't had the most fluid time in my education, and my mother's always been at my back, always helping me. And this is another example. I mean, without my mother as kind of a back of this company, personal opinion, this company really would struggle, if not fail.
What's your mum's name?
Sabina Royce-Carter. She's actually been on LBC before a long time ago. But Sabina Royce-Carter, she's in, if you look on the websites, on the blogs, she's in there. But that's actually, we decided, because it was Royce and Carter, my second name's Carter, but obviously my mother's, she's from Germany, which is RUSS, but we didn't really want the English pronunciation of Ruth and Carter. It doesn't really, flow off the tongue.
Listen, Christopher, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, and the very best of luck with the business. If I've ever got a few £1,000s to spend on a rug, I know where to come. It's 9:49. It's 9:52. James in Reading says, what support is there out there for those who can't get cash flow? That's the perennial question of anybody who starts a new business without enough backing. Oh, James is on the line. Sorry, I thought it was a text. It does say caller on the screen. It's my fault. It's been a hard day. I apologise. James, ask you a question in your words.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, very much what you asked. I've been having difficulties where basically how when you're starting out, how can you get help managing your cash flow issues where you're still making sales, but when you're a small new unit and there's big businesses out there, they've got longer credit terms than I can sort of afford.
What's your business, James? What do you say?
So it's dietetic consultation and bespoke menu engineering. It's quite niche.
Bespoke menu engineering for restaurants?
Yes.
Amazing.
Well, for anyone. We do football clubs, hotels, restaurants, schools, for local GPs, anyone who needs it.
Brilliant. So thoughts on cash flow, because you mentioned there might be bigger companies with better payment terms, and I'm sure you know this, but 30 days should be the payment terms in which you're getting paid. So make sure with your cash flow that your invoice is going out on time, that you're putting that 30-day limit. There is a brilliant organisation, man in the UK, that if you're not getting paid, you can go to, who's called the Small Business Commissioner. So it sounds as if that's not a huge issue for you, but if any of your clients are just not paying on time, you can report it to him and he will follow up on your behalf. But not meaning to sound trite, accountants are brilliant for this kind of stuff. Having a bookkeeper or an accountant, they will keep you honest when it comes to making sure the invoice is going out, that you're getting paid, but also that you're paying your own suppliers on time. So I would say just kind of keep your eye on it. It's the one thing that business owners can forget to do, is keep an eye on their finances. And as you know, kind of cash flow can be the thing that brings people down. So keep those invoices fluid. And as I say, if you've got any prompt payment issues, have a chat or just look up the Small Business Commissioner and he can help.
OK, James, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's move on to Keith in Waltham Forest. Keith, what would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I started a business in 2018, and I just wanted to know a bit more about any charitable companies you would recommend, because part of my community platform is around giving back. And I wanted to see if there were any recommendations out there, and also what you would advise around finding the right angel investors with the right agendas. That would be interesting to get some feedback on that.
OK, Ronel.
Keith, can you just tell me a little bit about your business?
So I created a community platform. It's an online platform which connects corporate individuals. Like, I've been in Canary Wharf for 10 plus years with startups and founders that, need help with their businesses. We put on like high-end events in like the Oxo Tower compared to, networking events where they're usually in like a WeWork or in a law firm. So we've created a different environment. And
so what you're doing is actually helping people who want to find successful businesses and giving them the chance to invest in them. Is that it?
Yeah, that's correct. That's part of what we do as part of the platform.
Okay, so there were two things that you asked. The first one was on charities. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to spot that the last 6 months, charity income and fundraising has been very, very badly hit. So if you're a business that wants to actually choose a charity, I'm sure you will find them bending over backwards for you.
But also finding the right charities where where it doesn't get lost in admin or along those lines, where that there's the right agendas and stuff going behind it.
Okay. Well, I'll give you one. Noah's Ark Children's Hospice in North London, in Barnet, opened last year by Sadiq Khan. He was at the opening ceremony. They help children with life-limiting illnesses. There are so many people and families who've got young people who have life-limiting illnesses, and if you've never been to a children's hospice, go for it.
Okay, Keith, thank you very much. Let's squeeze in Kia in Hackney as our final caller. Kia, what would you like to say? We're running short of time, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll be quick as possible. Well, what I do is I'm a business solutions advisor for the expertise of energy services. What happened to me was I used to work for a very big company, and the really big company taught me quite a lot about how energy works. But then the company went into administration. Long story short, they ended up owing suppliers like 30 million. Long story short. But then what ended up happening after that point was it allowed me to understand how the nature of businesses work. But then what it also showed me is the fact that a lot of business owners, they usually have the situation of not being able to understand how to manage the utilities. So it's like for example, can I ask you, do you have children?
No from me.
No from me.
Oh, we're a pretty useless panel.
Listen, we've literally got 45 seconds left in the programme, Kia, so I'm just going to ask Emma. I mean, basically...
What, am I going to have them?
No, with Daniel probably. How does he get people to take him seriously? I think that's the thrust of what he's saying.
Know your stuff. So if energy is your thing, and I love the fact you were going to pose a question to us, but how you get people to take you seriously, know your stuff and build your brand.
And speak with confidence. I mean, that's the main thing, isn't it?
At all times.
Listen, I'd love to phone in again, Keo, next week if we didn't really get to what you really wanted, but we do have to end there. Ronel, thank you very much indeed. That's Ronel Lehmann from Finito. Emma Jones will be back with me next week on the LBC Business Hour with O2.